in terms of success, you never really know how successful something is going to be. But I think what I think is very important is how we grow the story together. Because I think if we can tell a story that feels very honest, if we can tell a story that feels very human, talking about human rights, then I think it becomes very universal. I think, and for me, I think that's successful. Whether it gets awards or not is I can probably say this now that the film has got awards, but I think it's less important to me. It's more important to me that I show a reality of what it means to be a black person, what it means to be an African person, what it means to be someone who shows the dignity of my community in regards to how they live and the stories I tell.
Akinola Davis Jr., thank you to greet us in this beautiful house. This is a great honor to ask you some questions about your director movie's journey. Please, could you introduce yourself for our viewers? Who are you?
Sure. Firstly, it's such a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to speak to you. And Guadeloupe has been so beautiful, and we experienced a really warm welcome. So yeah, my name is Akinola Davis Jr. I am a filmmaker, Nigerian, British. I've made a lot of short films, but at the moment I've made my first feature film called My Father's Shadow, which is currently going around the world at film festivals, and is going to be released in France on the 26th of March.
Okay, so you are the guest for the 12th Monde en Vue Festival, which takes place in Guadeloupe. It was important for you to be here in Guadeloupe?
Yes, super important. I mean, a lot of my work, I try and, for myself as well as my work, I try and adopt a Pan-African ideology. I think it's very important to for Africans or members of the diaspora, whether in the Caribbean, in South America, or in Europe, to have a lot more self-determination in telling our own stories. I think it's very important that we show solidarity with each other. I think it's very important that we engage in dialogue about our future together, our past together, and I think it's very important that we own our own stories.
Okay. As you may know, since its creation, Monde en Vue is focusing around human rights. And what does human rights sound for you?
Sure. I mean, I think human rights is really about like the dignity and humanity of people. I think it's really important that, especially today, that we try and come to a global consensus of what human rights is, because I think maybe we're seeing that the old establishment of what human rights is in some instances can't be trusted as much as it used to. So I think more than ever today, festivals like Monde en Vue or anywhere that centralizes human rights is really important, because I think it's something that we have to constantly reimagine and claim for ourselves.
Okay, so you were born in London, you raised in Lagos, Nigeria. Was it difficult for you to have the both culture, the British one and the Nigerian one, or it was more easier?
Sure. I think at times it's very difficult. I mean, when you're yeah, for real, because I think when I was younger, I'm Nigerian. You know, I grew up in Nigeria. I knew I had a British passport, but when you grow up in Nigeria, you don't really know the difference. And then I came to school in England, and nobody looked like me anymore because I went to school in the countryside. And then I started to have a lot more, I had to construct my identity, whereas before in Nigeria, I never had to think about my identity before, because everybody's black, everybody looks like you. So I think, yeah, throughout my teenage and my early 20s, I was always trying to understand a little bit more about my identity, because sometimes when I stay in London or the UK for a long time, I go back to Nigeria and people think, oh, you're not Nigerian, you're English.
For real?
Yeah, you have situations where...
Explain.
Well, to some people, yeah. You know, so you're not Nigerian enough to be considered Nigerian, and in England you're not British enough to be considered fully British. So I think most of my life, and actually a reason why I started making films, was to claim my own identity, saying that nobody can give you a sense of identity. You have to claim it for yourself, because if you are in between two worlds, then sometimes it can be tricky. But obviously once you embrace and you accept it for yourself, you have a better understanding of what that means for you.
Saturday night was the opening of the Monde en Vue Festival in the Memorial Act. We could watch your first chef-d'œuvre, Lizard, which won the 2021 Grand Jury at Sundance. And now your feature debut, My Father's Shadows, premiere selected in Cannes. How has your aesthetic approach evolved from these two milestones, both emotionally and technically? And the second question is, did you expect that such success in that closed movie world?
So I would say my approach has evolved in a way that it's made me even more committed to telling Black stories. It's made me more committed to, you say emotionally and technically, it's made me more committed emotionally to working with Black collaborators and Black talent. So like, for example, my cinematographer for Lizard was from Antigua, and my cinematography for My Father's Shadow is Jamaican. Okay. So, for example, I didn't realize till I was in Monde en Vue that, oh, there's a big Caribbean big Caribbean input into the work. So, and I think it's really important. I say that because I think when you work with people who are invested in the community and from the community, there's more love put into the work emotionally. And I think technically, there's always this conversation of experience, giving certain types of people experience. So, for example, my cinematographer for My Father's Shadow, it's his first feature film, and he's been working in the industry for a while, but nobody wanted to give him an opportunity. And now, when so many people talk about the cinematography of the film, so I think it's very important for me, spiritually, technically, and emotionally, to double down, to tell more, to be more invested in community in terms of storytelling. So that's how the journey. In terms of success, you never really know how successful something is going to be, but I think what I think is very important is how we grow the story together, because I think if we can tell a story that feels very honest, if we can tell a story that feels very human, talking about human rights, then I think it becomes very universal. I think, and for me, I think that's successful. Whether it gets awards or not is I can probably say this now that the film has got awards, but I think it's less important to me. It's more important to me that I show a reality of what it means to be a Black person, what it means to be an African person, what it means to be someone who shows the dignity of my community in regards to how they live and the stories I tell.
Okay. So, Lizard, to me, is it a drawing of the Nigeria society or a critique of that society? Because we could see the impact of the evangelical churches and the poverty, the violence, because Lagos is one of the most violent cities in the world. Is that correct?
I would say there is a misconception of Lagos being one of the most violent cities, and I think that conception of Lagos, I don't believe it to be true. I think it's quite, in some instances, quite a colonial projection onto Lagos. I think Lagos has its problems, like any big metropolis, any metropolis that doesn't have the infrastructure to accommodate the population. I think there's always going to be tension, but I don't believe Lagos is a dangerous place, a violent place. I think there are some areas that maybe are, but No, I don't necessarily. I don't necessarily think it's a violent place. I think it's a beautiful place that's very conflicting, right? So when you ask me, is it a critique? Is Lizard a critique? I think it's two things are true. I think in some instances it is a critique, but in some instances it's I only present the truth of my experience in that place. I think Nigeria is quite an extreme place. There's extreme poverty, there's extreme wealth, and I think when those things live side by side, there's always going to be a tension. I think Lizard is more a question as to why those things happen. It's almost an allegory of like, if you have these two opposition scales, then there's always room for something in the middle. But fundamentally, I think human is again about Lizard is about the humanity of the characters within the story. You know, yeah.
Okay. So during an interview, you said that you wanted to be a video editor.
Yes.
But now you're a movie director.
Yes.
And how and why your choice evolved?
Okay, so so I wanted to be a video editor because I really loved. I wanted to be part of a filmmaking community at the beginning, and the only person who I saw was my friend's father. He was a video editor, and I really thought his life was amazing. So I said, I want to do what your father does. And then I think when I started to engage more with film, I think I realized I wanted to be with people, and editing is quite a isolated craft. So I worked in every department: costume, second camera, first assistant camera, everything. But I think everybody told me that my personality is more suited to directing. So that's kind of how it evolved naturally in its sort of technical sense. But I also think I have so many ideas that I would always try and encourage my collaborators, and they were like, "You're a director. You should direct. You know, you should try, because you have all these ideas, and it's sometimes you can't always make someone else tell your idea. You have to go and make your idea." It's actually my brother who encouraged me a lot, so that's how I became a director.
Feather Shadows, which you co-wrote with your brother, is your first feature film. It is also the first Nigerian film selected in Cannes Festival. Are you aware of the impact of this recognition could you have on your youth and your country, Nigeria?
Sure. It's the first Nigerian film in official selection in Cannes, because there's other films that have been in Nigerian films been in Cannes, but the first official one. So we had a theatrical release in Nigeria recently, and it was magical. I think the film for a lot of people is not only a drama, but a family drama, but a historical drama as well, because it touches on a period in Nigerian history which many people don't know, because in Nigeria, because of authoritarianism, dictatorship, we didn't have our history taught to us. We were only getting taught European or British history, and so we don't even know like our contributions to the First and Second World War and all those kind of things, because Nigeria had big contribution for the British, for example. But in terms of the impact, I think Nigeria has an amazing film industry called Nollywood, and it's third biggest in the world, you know. But I think what our film shows is that if there's more international collaboration, that maybe our stories can go further, because Nollywood serves Nigerians first and foremost, and then Africans in general. But I think the success of our film is because of international collaborations and trying to tell like a slower, more nuanced story. So I think the impact hopefully will encourage Nigerians to tell similar stories, and also invest in our literature, in our writers, in our journalists, in people there who also tell really fantastic stories.
Okay, so as one of the leading voices of the new generation of African filmmakers, what do you hope for the next decades of Nigerian and African cinema will look like, and both artistically and politically?
Sure. I think that's a fantastic question, actually. Thank you for asking. I think my dream and my hope is similar to being here at Mondeview, is that there will be a lot more collaboration across the continent and across the diaspora. I think it's really important that we invest in each other, coming to each other's countries and each other's festivals and showing our films in each other's countries as a matter of urgency, because I think it's really important to understand our histories, see the commonalities in our histories and how we can learn from each other, how we can support each other. Because, for example, it's super difficult to fly, even within Africa, to other African countries.
I thought it was more easier.
No, actually, it's really difficult. For example, for me to fly to Dakar, I have to go potentially via France or Dubai or something like that.
From Nigeria to go to Senegal, okay.
Yeah, and to go to the DRC. So I think
there was no direct flight?
No. So I think it's super important that in even, you know, our ability to, our mobility in terms of physically and in terms of creatively, I think is really important that we engage in our film festivals, in our stories, in our cross collaboration. I really hope there is more cross collaboration between film crews and financing in the continent and in the Caribbean and the diaspora, because I think when we center ourselves is when we grow together as a people. I think a lot of what we center is, you know, is other films, other communities, and I think the more we can center and focus on our own stories, the better it will be in terms of filmmakers, in terms of talent, in terms of the industry, moving forward.
If you could give one piece of advice is for a young filmmaker from Guadeloupe or anywhere in the world who dreams of following your footsteps, what will it be?
Sure, another fantastic question. I would say it's really important to two things. One is do not be intimidated by access or lack of access to resources. I think if you have a smartphone, you have a camera, and you can start to make films. I think what's really important is the idea. So long as you have an idea and you can film it on a smartphone, because you can always, the equipment will always get better the more you get better. You don't want to give yourself pressure of having big equipment but not having the idea. So I will always say start with the idea. If you have a phone, film your friends and your community. Start telling the stories of your friends and your community first, because that is going to be a safe space for you to tell stories. And then, yeah, secondly, I think I would probably say that, tell stories about your community, really. I think that's really important, because everybody wants to make an action film or a big comedy or a romance, but I don't know. I want to know a story about a young kid from Guadeloupe. I want to see how they live. I want to see whether they're dancing to bouillon or chata. I want to know.
Oh, you do know that dance?
Yeah, I know a little bit about it, but I want to know where the music comes from. I want to know, you know, how that music will soundtrack a film. I want to know what encouraged people to make it. For me, that's what's really exciting, because once I know a little bit more of Guadeloupean or the texture of someone's community, I think it's super interesting, because I think at the moment, similar to a lot of the talks they had yesterday about Fanon, we know so much about white history and white culture and everything, but we need to know more about our own history and our own culture. So I think any young filmmaker should center themselves and their community.
Okay, thank you for your answers.
You're so welcome.